Ladies and gentlemen, Halloween is almost here. Do you want to sit there and keep looking like a complete idiot? No! Go to sagrollapparel.com and use code SPOOKY to get 15% off your order. And get this Halloween sweater now because it's only for a limited time. Get it now. Shazam! It's me! Did you like that? That's my new catchphrase. I'm coining it right now in front of everyone, just so no one takes that. You know, it's like my own bazinga. So every time you guys come, you're like, oh, it's the one guy who says Shazam. Today, we're going to be covering the ode to horror movies that is Frankenweenie. Yes, another stop motion film. I've just become the stop motion film guy this month. And Frankenweenie, I actually didn't watch this one when I was younger. It's one of those ones that was there, but I never really got around to watching it. I did want to watch it. I just never really got around to watching it. And after watching this film, this is the most horror film I've seen of Tim Burton. I mean, the entire film is literally Tim Burton's tribute to classic horror movies. It's got references to movies like, of course, Frankenstein, Nosferatu, Godzilla, The Omen, The Mummy, Pet Sematary, Bambi. Bambi meets Godzilla. Wait, what? Oh my God, that's real? What's the point? What? I know what I'm watching after this. And I feel like a good representation of how many references there are is I caught so many in this movie. And I don't even watch horror movies. I never watch horror movies. So the fact that I caught a bunch of references means there's a lot in this movie. And on top of everything, the whole movie's in black and white, you know, to give it that whole classic horror movie vibe. And oh my gosh, this movie is such a fun ride. And especially if you like horror movies, this is just an amazing watch. And on top of that, this movie isn't solely based on references. It's not like only carried by its references. I mean, sure, the entire time you're going to be pointing your finger at the screen saying, hey, I've seen that before. I know what that is. But I'm just going to say, I got very sad boy hours when it came to this movie. I mean, mainly because it has to do with the death of a dog. And as all humans know, no one cares if a human dies. But boy, if a dog dies, I'm losing my shit.
Kill a dog, what?
Whoa. No. It's just a figure of speech, you know?
Man, I don't care what figure you're talking about. What's going on with the dog, man?
The dog is fine, Peter. The dog is fine.
You wanna know something that's not fine? Everyone watching these videos, they're watching it for me.
What are you talking about? No one cares about you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You actually thought they were here for you? Look at me. I control this whole shindig. I'm the reason for your success. You understand?
Peter, literally all you do is come in here when something has to do with an animal, run upstairs and eat all of my salami sandwiches.
Right, that reminds me. I need to get some more salami.
Damn it, Peter.
I own you. I own your dogs. I own your house. I own your wife. I am you. Looks like you're having like an identity crisis or something, dude. Calm down.
Oh God, I think I am. And identity's no laughing matter, which is why you should do everything in your power to make sure you protect that identity with private internet access. Private internet access is the world's most transparent VPN with over 30 million downloads. It changes your IP address and reroutes your internet traffic through an encrypted tunnel. Not only that, but it hides your online activity from internet service providers, network administrators, and government censors. Not to mention, it's the most customizable VPN on the market, so you can make the experience truly your own. And on top of this VPN protecting your online privacy, it also blocks ad trackers and malicious websites. And it works with all major streaming services, so it has unrestricted access to everything. Plus, it is one of the few VPNs that allow P2P file sharing and torrenting. So what are you doing browsing the internet's unsafe? Go to privateinternetaccess.com/Bionicpig and get that sick deal right now. Take your internet security seriously. People, if you have not watched this movie before I'm about to talk about it, I would recommend watching it, especially during the Halloween season, which is obviously right now. So I would recommend going to watch this movie. It's such a fun watch. Anyway, let's get into it. Shazam. Still not sticking? No? So the movie starts out with the main character, Victor Frankenstein. He is sitting on the couch with his parents and he is showing them a movie that he created with a bunch of makeshift stuff they have around the house. And the movie is kind of reminiscent of Rodin. You know, the big pterodactyl bird creature from Godzilla? And then in this makeshift movie that Victor made, Sparky is like the main protagonist of this show. He's like the monster that comes in and saves the day. And Sparky is obviously the dog. And I just want to mention something. These parents are freaking cool. I mean, we watched so many older other films where it's like the parents are just completely neglectful or they're just awful to their child. So it's a nice change of pace to see his parents actually care for the stuff that he makes. I mean, they sat down, watched this whole movie, and even clapped at the end. Like, come on, you're just some good parents already. And then Victor's mom says something that's pretty sad. She said that Victor's only friend is Sparky. Oh boy. Thank God this movie is about a dog dying. That's not technically spoilers, okay, people? Like, it's in the title. Frankenweenie. The dog's gonna die, okay? You understand? So the next character we meet in this movie is Mr. Burgermeister, the kind of uptight asshole neighbor that most people have. And he's kind of warning Victor, hey, you know, your dog needs to stay off my lawn, you know, or something bad will happen. Boy, I hope something bad doesn't happen to the dog. So we find out that Mr. Burgermeister is actually the mayor of the town. And he's looking after his niece, whose name is Elsa Van Helsing. Little bit of a reference there. So Victor goes to class and we meet his new science teacher, Mr. Rizarewski. I think that's right. And something about the environment of this movie and like all the character designs, everyone is like some sort of scary thing. Like none of them are really normal. The only normal person is a questionable Asian stereotype character who is the only smart character. We're just gonna glaze over that portion, I guess.
Boom! The circuit is complete, and all of the electrons rush to the land of opportunity. This man is in the way!
So then the class starts talking about how storms happen every night and people get struck by lightning often, which is kind of like a setup for what's going to happen in the future, obviously. Because obviously, if they didn't add that line in there, if they didn't talk about the reasoning behind why lightning strikes all the time, a lot of the rest of the movie wouldn't make sense. So they kind of nipped that plot hole in the butt early on. Smart. So we get a little portion here of Sparky kind of flirting with the neighbor's dog. Sparky about to get some doggy treats. I'm sorry. So as Victor's leaving class, Mr. Rizarewski, I already forgot his name, talks about a science fair and they all need their parents to sign a permission slip. So as Victor's about to leave the school, this weird girl comes up to him. Yes, her name is actually Weird Girl in IMDb. She doesn't have a name, but she is voiced by Catherine O'Hara, which is pretty interesting. But anyway, she tells Victor that Mr. Whiskers had a dream about him last night. And the reason she knows that is because her kitty's turd is in the shape of a V. And she mentions that it's an omen. And the only reason she knows this is in the past, I guess she just searches through her cat's poo-poo sometimes. In the past, when her cat's poop was in the shape of a letter, someone with the name that has that letter at the beginning, something bad happens to them. So she's basically like, yo, Victor, watch out, my cat poo-poo told the future, something bad about to happen. I mean, she is right. And then we meet Edgar Igor. And, you know, by his body shape, you can kind of tell Igor, you know, there's a little bit more reference there. There's a lot of references, okay? And he mentions he wants to team up at a science fair, and he mentions he wants to make a death ray, but the science fair paper says no death rays. But anyway, Victor kind of shoos him off, says he likes working alone, and moves on. So Victor brings the permission slip to his dad, and his dad wants to compromise. He says, hey, I'll sign this permission slip if you go out for a sport, because he wants his son to be a little bit more outgoing because he doesn't have any friends. So he ends up agreeing, does the science fair, and goes out for baseball. And I just want to mention something interesting. Apparently, like, the entire town knows Sparky and they all love Sparky. Like, even during a baseball game, Sparky kind of runs up and grabs a baseball out of the air and they're all just like, yo, good catch, Sparky. So we can see that everyone kind of likes Sparky. But anyway, Victor goes up to bat, and with zero experience and zero muscle, I mean, literally his arms and legs are sticks, he knocks a ball all the way out to the road. And Sparky goes after it. Oh, dear God.
Tell that dog to stop right now, man. I don't like where this is going.
I can't stop him. I can't do it.
No.
So then we kind of get a little few scenes of, you know, everyone kind of being sad. Sparky's dead, you know, everyone's sad. Obviously, dog dies, people get sad. And then he goes to class. And Mr. Rizarewski, he keeps talking more about lightning and gives a demonstration with a frog, a dead frog. And he talks about how the nervous system is all electricity. And you could even move muscles and body parts after death if you put electricity in it. And so obviously this gives Victor Frankenstein an idea. Boy, I wonder what that idea is. So Victor starts grabbing a bunch of items and heads upstairs, implying that he's building something, heads to the pet cemetery and digs up Sparky. And then a black cat, very similar to that of Coraline, you know, the cat who gave Coraline a buttload of warnings, jumps up on a tombstone and kind of hisses at Victor, you know, saying like, yo, this is a bad idea. But Victor does not heed the warning and picks up Sparky and brings him back home. And so Victor kind of just sneaks past his parents while his parents are watching a horror movie and kind of just drags Sparky's dead body upstairs. And obviously you guys kind of get what happens. His name's literally Victor Frankenstein. You know, he does the whole thing where he puts some screws in Sparky's neck. He puts him on a little bed and brings him up into the sky, puts the balloons out and kite, and then strikes the lightning and the kite goes, and then he goes back down and he's alive now. His tail starts wagging. Sparky's alive. And I do find it kind of funny how like sewn up Sparky is, implying that Sparky literally exploded when he got hit by the car. And then they literally have like a piece of quilt fabric sewn on his back instead of skin. He's pretty mutilated, if I would say so myself. So Victor tells Sparky, yo, stay in here. No one can know what's going on, and kind of goes off to school and leaves Sparky upstairs. And Sparky has a little bit of an issue when he starts drinking water and water just starts squirting out of his body. But then Sparky ends up seeing the cat, you know, the cat who could tell the future apparently. And you know, dogs being dogs, he starts chasing after the cat. So we get a little scene of Sparky just kind of running around everywhere doing dog things. And then Edgar Igor accidentally spots Sparky. And instead of being like, oh God, dead dog walking among us, God damn it, did I really just say Among Us? So instead of him like freaking out, being like, oh my God, there was a dead dog, Edgar is intrigued and interested, like, how did he do it? So Sparky ends up going home and going to the backyard and ends up seeing Persephone, you know, the other dog, Persephone Van Helsing. But he ends up dog nose touching, shocks her, and oh, look at that, her hair is the same as Mrs. Frankenstein. So Victor gets home, obviously worried, but he goes upstairs and Sparky's just chilling like nothing ever happened. But then he noticed that Sparky is getting very tired. So obviously, Sparky being Sparky ends up clamping some electricity onto his little wrench nut bolts, and he shocks alive. I am very good with words. So Edgar goes to Victor's house and kind of confronts him like, yo, I know about your dog. You need to tell me how you did it. And this is where shit starts going bad for Victor. So Edgar tells Victor, hey, we need to do this as a science project because, you know, the science fair is coming up and you need to show me how you did it. So this time they use a dead fish. And instead of the dead fish only coming back to life, this time the fish is invisible. So we could already tell like, hey, something's gonna start going wrong if he keeps messing with this type of stuff. So for some reason, he lets Edgar take the fish and just says, hey, don't tell anyone. Obviously, he tells everyone. So honestly, I find this hilarious. So he goes around and shows people the invisible fish. And instead of them being like, oh, invisible fish that came back to life, holy shit, they're more worried, oh my God, they have a better science fair project than we do. That's pretty much what everyone's worried about here. No one is worried about reanimation or people coming back to life. They're more worried about their science fair project.
You gotta come up with something better, bigger.
I know.
The science fair's in 2 days.
I know.
Well, you're the smart one.
I know.
Boy, why? Like, what was even the point of having him in there? So Toshiaki tells Robert about the invisible fish, and he goes to confront Edgar about it. And Robert is apparently based off of Boris Karloff, basically like the antagonist of Frankenstein. So Toshiaki and Bob kind of tried to do a different science project, and Bob ends up hurting himself. So they have a parent-teacher conference to kind of get rid of the new science teacher. And this part is hilarious and pretty accurate, because every single one of the parents are only angry because they're kind of ignorant to basic science. There's even one parent who complains and says, these stupid science books says Pluto isn't even a planet anymore. What's going on? And another parent complains just because she literally doesn't even understand some of the scientific stuff that he's teaching. And it's pretty interesting because Edward Frankenstein stands up and he's like, hey, well, my son Victor loves this new teacher. So they bring the new teacher up, and him obviously being like this morbid, crazed man, he says the right thing, but he says it in a very aggressive way to where it looks terrible for everyone else.
I think the confusion here is that you are all very ignorant. Is that the right word, ignorant? I mean stupid, primitive, unenlightened, such small minds.
So before the new teacher leaves, Victor goes up to him and asks him a question, basically saying, hey, the first time I did my science project, it worked great, and the second time it didn't. And the teacher tells him, well, you changed the variables, because the first time Victor said that he loved it, and the second time he said he just wanted it over. And he said, if you don't love what you're doing with the project you're doing for science, then a lot of times it doesn't turn out the way you want it to be. And this is why a bunch of shit is about to go wrong. So Toshiaki and Robert find out by Edgar, of course, that Victor ended up bringing back Sparky. And again, They're only worried about winning the science fair. They don't care about reanimation. They don't care about the fact that they brought back his beloved pet. No, they just want to win the science fair because obviously Victor is going to win. So Victor's mom ends up going upstairs and stumbling upon Sparky. And this part is pretty funny as well because Victor's mom and dad finds out. And instead of, like freaking out like most people would do, his dad's like, why would you do that? Reanimation? Come on, I am very upset with you. You crossing the boundaries between life and death? Slap on the wrist. How dare you? So in that whole thing, Sparky ends up running out the window and then all of them agree to go help find him. And during this time while they're out, the entire classroom basically, including Robert, Bob, Toshiaki, the weird girl, and Edgar, they all go into Victor's laboratory. And I guess Victor had the formula to bring animals back to life on the board, and they all thought, hey, I'm gonna bring my animal back to life. So Sparky ends up running back to the cemetery and laying on his grave. And then he sees all the kids go to the pet cemetery and dig up their pets. And then we see Robert go to the tomb of Colossus, which is literally like a whole freaking building. And he says, soon you shall be awakened. So that's pretty ominous. So Toshiaki has a turtle. Edgar ends up finding a dead rat on the street. And Bob has a bag of sea monkeys. Oh yeah, also the weird girl sees Mr. Whiskers with a bat in his mouth and thinks, I wonder if I struck this cat with lightning, what would happen? So every single one of them, because they live in a town where lightning strikes every single night, every single one of them do the experiment. But the problem is they bring it back to life for the wrong reasons. So every single one of these animals that is brought back to life is brought back horrifically. Mr. Whiskers turns into a bat demon. The dead rat turns into a crazed giant rat. And Colossus, who by the way happens to be a hamster, turns into just a mummy, which is obviously just a reference to the mummy. And Toshiaki's turtle turns into a fucking kaiju, which obviously is a reference to Gamera, which I guess could explain the whole reason that he's Asian, Asian kaiju, Godzilla, the kind of mixed together well. And Bob's sea monkeys are just, sea monkey demon creatures. So pretty much every single one of these pets are just running rampant throughout the town, terrorizing people. So Victor goes to the cemetery and ends up finding Sparky and sees all of the graves dug up. So he's starting to get a little bit suspicious. So he sees all of these sea monkeys running away, and then Toshiaki and Bob come up to him and basically be like, hey, we need your help. We did the thing that we weren't supposed to, and now they're all demons and animal and creepy, scary, poopy. So the giant turtle kaiju ends up running into the Dutch fair that the mayor is doing, with Elsa Van Helsing singing a very amazing musical number. So the mayor sees this and runs to the porta potty, which obviously, if any of you have seen Jurassic Park, is a big reference to that scene in Jurassic Park. I know you guys probably know. So Robert brings his mummy hamster to the party, with the giant kaiju and all the other crazy animals running around with this little mummy hamster, and very dramatically exclaims, Colossus, kill the kaiju. And then obviously he just gets stepped on. So somehow, I really don't know how this works, but every single one of these animals is beaten by electricity because the giant rat creature ended up biting on one of Sparky's bolts in his neck and gets shocked and ends up turning back to a dead rat. So Victor figures this out and kind of does this for every single one of the animals. So the mayor ends up getting out of the porta potty and sees Sparky, and obviously already him hating Sparky, he ends up getting the entire town to become a mob and chase Sparky. Frankenstein's monster, when the entire town turned into a mob with pitchforks and flame chasing him to a tower? Seems familiar. So Victor Frankenstein goes to help Elsa Van Helsing, who is fighting the cat bat creature. Kind of ironic that Dr. Frankenstein is helping Van Helsing. Oh yeah, also the other dog is there. So they end up catching the dog, and the mayor accidentally sets the lighthouse on fire. So Elsa ends up getting saved by Victor. He throws her a rope and she ends up making it down with her dog. And this part I find kind of confusing. If you see your child in a fire, potentially dying and burning to death, it doesn't matter if you're gonna die. If you're a parent, you're running in there. Victor's dad starts running in and someone's like, no, it's too dangerous, but my son's in there. Go in. What do you mean? I know that's like a cliche, it fits, but come on. So Sparky ends up dragging Victor out of the house successfully, but ends up getting dragged back into the house by the giant Mr. Whiskers bat demon. And then with a final reference, and this reference I am very surprised that I knew. So the cat bat demon ends up getting impaled by a piece of wood that came from the top of the tower, which is a reference to to The Omen. So there's this part in The Omen where a piece of a cross falls off of a church, and it is falling down straight towards this dude, and the entire time he is looking up screaming no, and doesn't move, gets impaled by this thing. Now, I remember this because I was so annoyed back then that this dude wouldn't move. It's like, just move out of the way, you know? What an idiot. So anyway, the building ends up collapsing on Sparky and, you know, the dead cat bat. So then the end of the movie, which is actually very surprising. I honestly thought they were going to let Sparky just kind of die, which would make sense, you know, the whole cliche of you need to let go, the dog's dead, you know, all the different stuff. But we are in a movie that is referencing classic horror movies. So how the movie ends is the whole town gets their cars together and hook Sparky up to a battery, and they all rev their engines in order to bring Sparky back to life. So kind of defeating that whole thing of the classic Frankenstein movie where they ended up chasing him down. This time they ended up bringing him back to life. So Sparky ends up living happily ever after with Victor, you know, until I guess his battery runs out or he rots. I don't really know. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's Frankenweenie. Honestly, such a good classic homage to all of these freaking horror movies that for some reason I didn't even know that I knew. So if you guys want a nice movie to watch for the Halloween season, I would very much recommend Frankenweenie. And if you guys like this video, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to share it with your friends. Also, please make sure to follow me on the socials, you know, Twitter, you know, Twitch, you know, the Instagram, you know, all that fancy stuff. Make sure to follow me there. Bye.